Hello everyone. We are going to start with classification of elements and periodicity in properties. So first of all, let us recall about what you have learned in class 10. And firstly, that is law of triads by the German chemist Johann Doberener in early 1800s. He said that the elements were placed in a group of three and they were called triads. And they were placed in increasing order of atomic masses. Then came Newland's law of octaves. He also placed the elements in increasing order of their atomic masses, but unlike Doberener, what he did was he said that the every eighth element had properties similar to the first element. So he took use of more number of elements. And the relationship was just like every note that resembled the first in octaves of music. Now, his law was quite useful, but it was actually useful till calcium and until the noble gases were actually discovered. After their discovery, it no longer remained an eighth element. Now, you can see in this slide that there are Doberener's triad, that is lithium, sodium, potassium. So sodium will be having the average atomic mass of that of lithium and potassium. Similarly for calcium, strontium and barium, and same goes for chlorine, bromine and iodine. Now here, that is Newland's octave. You can see that there are 7 elements from hydrogen till oxygen and the repeating element is fluorine. So hydrogen and fluorine will have similar physical properties and little bit chemical properties also. But in Newland's octave also, you see that in the column where hydrogen and fluorine are there is cobalt and nickel. And these are not non-metals, but these are metals, so they were wrongly placed. So there were similar anomalies here seen, which you have already read. I will not discuss in this slide anymore. So after this came Mendeleev's periodic law. He said the properties of elements are periodic functions of their atomic weight. And there were vertical rows and vertical columns of a table. Now Mendeleev's, the things that Mendeleev did, that were he left gaps under the silicon and aluminium, and he named them Eka aluminium and Eka silicon. Later on, it was discovered that Eka aluminium had properties similar to gallium and Eka silicon had properties similar to germanium. He actually left vacant places for undiscovered elements and also predicted the properties of those undiscovered elements. That is what we read just now. Now after this, what happened is Henry Moseley showed that atomic number is the more fundamental property of an element than its atomic mass, and then came the modern periodic law. So the modern periodic law states the physical and chemical properties of the element are periodic functions of their atomic number. So this is the modern periodic law. And this modern periodic law is only called the periodic or the modern form of periodic law that you are reading now. So this periodic law revealed analogies among the 94 naturally occurring elements Neptunium and plutonium, like actinium and protoactinium, are also found in pitchblende and ore of uranium. Now in this modern periodic law or the table, you can see that the horizontal rows of the periodic table are called periods, while the vertical columns are called groups or families. Now, division of the modern periodic table. It is actually divided into 4 blocks, starting with S block. In the S block, the elements What is happening here? It is comprising of group 1 and group 2. Group 1 consists of alkali metals and group 2 comprises of alkaline earth metals. Their outermost electronic configuration is Ns1 or Ns2. All of us know that it comprises of metals mainly. They are highly reactive, they are low ionization enthalpies, and generally they are actually losing electrons. Their metallic character and reactivity increases as we go down the group. That's why they are not found in pure form in nature. And all of us knows about their chemical reactivity. For example, sodium of group 1. It reacts violently with air and water. And there is also exception, that is first elements of the respective periods, lithium and beryllium. They are predominantly ionic. Now similarly, p block element. P block comprises of group 13 to 18. That is from boron till neon. Now here the electronic configuration is Ns2, Np, it can be 1 to 6. Okay, so the outermost electron will be filled in the p orbitals. Now here the noble gases, that is the last one, Ns2, Np6 or group 18, they only exhibit low chemical reactivity. And just before the noble gases, that is the group 17 or the halogens, they are highly reactive. And before that, group 16, that is the chalcogens, that is also highly reactive. So these two group of elements, that is group 16 and 17, have highly negative electron gain enthalpies and readily add 1 or 2 electrons respectively to attain the stable noble gas configuration. Now the non-metallic character increases as we move from left to right across a period, and metallic character increases as we move down the group. Now coming to D block. D block is the middle part of the periodic table, that is C in the middle between the S block and P block. Their electronic configuration is N-1, D1 to 10 and Ns1 or 2. So their properties are, shows catalytic properties, forms colored ions, for example iron, Fe2 plus or Fe3 plus, they can form Ni2 plus, all these. Shows paramagnetic behaviors or properties, forms complexes. They are often referred to as transition elements as they are placed between metals and non-metals. Actually, they are placed between the most chemically active metals of S block and the less active metals of group 13 and 14, and thus their familiar name is transition elements. Now coming to S block element or inner transition elements. Their position is at the bottom of the periodic table. Their general electronic configuration is Ns2, N-1, D, 0 to 1. And here you will have to just see, it is written here wrongly. It will be N-2, F, 1 to 14. Now the inner transition metals are known as F block elements. They have incomplete d orbital electronic configuration in their normal state and in their oxidation state. They are generally radioactive and they comprises of two rows. The first row is lanthanoids and the second row is actinoids. If you have a periodic table in your hand, then you can easily check this up. Now the trends in physical properties that you are going to discuss is written here. We are going to discuss in this order. So firstly, coming to atomic radius. Now there are two kinds of atomic radius, that is covalent radius and metallic radius. Obviously atomic radius refers to the size of the atom. And in class 10 also you have read, and here also the same thing. Atomic radius is actually decreasing from left to right because the principal quantum number is increasing and the effective nuclear charge is increasing. That means that the outermost electrons are more tightly held or tightly attracted by the nucleus, and the atomic radius, it increases down a group as the number of shells increases, and down the group the effective nuclear charge, it is outweighed by the increase in number of shells. So we can see in this graph on the right hand side, you can see that along the period it is shown. So lithium, it is having whatever atomic radius, it is between 140 to 160, and fluorine, it is having actually atomic radius between 60 to 80. So there is considerable decrease seen from lithium to fluorine. Now variation of atomic size to that of alkali metals. Now here also the same thing. See, down the group it is shown. So lithium is the first element of group 1. Its atomic size, and see that of cesium is huge. Cesium is comparatively large compared to lithium, and same is case of fluorine till iodine. Now coming to ionic radius. Now what is the ion? When we remove an electron from an atom, it results in formation of an ion. And we can say also the reverse. When you are giving an electron to an atom, it will also result in formation of ion. So the removal of an electron from an atom results in formation of cation, and the gain of electron leads to an anion. A cation will always be smaller than its parent atom. That means when you are taking one electron out from sodium and it is forming Na+, then the size of Na+ will be smaller than that of Na. And in case of anion, the size will be larger than its parent ion or parent atom. Why is that? Because the electron is added in the last shell only, and due to addition of one or more electrons, there is a repulsion between the electrons. There were already electrons there and you are adding one more electron. So there will be repulsion among the electrons, leading to a slightly larger size. Now, when we find some atoms and ions which have same number of electrons, we call them isoelectronic species. For example, say Na plus and Mg2 plus. So see here, sodium plus and magnesium double plus, they both have actually 10 electrons in them. Since they have got 10 electrons in their ionic form, so I will be calling them, or we will be calling them, isoelectronic species. Now, the cation with the greater positive charge will have a smaller radius because of the greater attraction of the electrons to the nucleus. Now it means that if we take Na plus and Mg2 plus, obviously Mg2 plus, due to its higher positive charge, will have smaller atomic size, ionic radius. And if we take O2 minus and F minus, these two are also isoelectronic species. Here O2 minus, due to having greater number of electrons, will have larger ionic radius than F minus. Now coming to the next topic, that is ionization enthalpy. So a quantitative measure of the tendency of an element to lose electron is given by its ionization enthalpy. It represents the energy required to remove an electron from an isolated gaseous atom in its ground state. So it is basically the energy required to remove an electron. Now ionization enthalpy is expressed in units of kilojoule per mole, and when you are removing the second electron, we can define that as second ionization enthalpy. Similarly, if we remove the third electron, we will refer that as third ionization enthalpy, and so on. Now since energy is required to remove an electron, because we are taking the electron out of the attractive force of the nucleus, so it will always be positive. And when you are removing the second electron and also the third, what is happening? The number of protons are remaining as it is. Electrons are decreasing. So the protons or the nucleus will exert more amount of force on the electrons. So the second ionization enthalpy will obviously be greater than that of the first ionization enthalpy. See here, energy is always required to remove electrons from an atom, and hence ionization enthalpies are always positive. The second ionization enthalpy will be higher than the first ionization enthalpy because it is more difficult to remove an electron from a positively charged ion than from a neutral ion. And lastly, to remove electron from noble gases, ionization enthalpy will be more. So basically ionization enthalpy increases as we are moving from left to right across a period and decreases as you are moving down the group. Now there is a term called shielding effect. This helps us in understanding the relation between the atomic radius and the ionization enthalpy. So in multi-electron atoms, the electrons which are present in the outermost shell, they do not experience the full positive charge of the nucleus because they are shielded away by the electrons which are at present or between them and the nucleus. So, for example, in the same subshell, the p electrons will get shielded away by the s electron, as p electron is always under the influence of nucleus and hence it does not experience a complete positive charge. So this shielding effect will help us in correlating between ionization enthalpy and atomic radius. So the outermost electrons, whatever you were expecting, the nuclear charge, they will be experiencing. Now due to this shielding effect, obviously it will be slightly less. So shielding effect shields the outermost electrons, and the effective nuclear charge experienced by the outermost electrons will be slightly less. Now, what are the effects of this shielding effect? Now, in lithium, lithium is belonging to period 2 and group 1. The 2s electrons of lithium is properly shielded away by the inner core of 1s electron. The electronic configuration of lithium is 1s2 and 2s1. So as a result, the valence electron experiences, valence electron means the 2s1 electrons, they will be experiencing a charge less than plus 3. So shielding effect is very effective for lithium. But we cannot say the same for all the elements in the same period, which we will be seeing in the next slide. So when we move from lithium to fluorine across the second period, what happens? Successive electrons are added there only in the same shell. As a result, the nuclear charge is very effective, and shielding effect actually is not so much beneficial or not so much seen here. Thus, across a period, increasing nuclear charge outweighs the shielding. Consequently, the outermost electrons are held more and more tightly, and ionization enthalpy increases across a period. So as we move down a group, the outermost electron being increasingly farther from the nucleus, there is an increased shielding of the nuclear charge by the electrons in the inner level. So down the group, the shielding effect is more because the new electrons are added to new shells. As a result, the shielding effect is very proper here, and so the ionization enthalpy is actually decreasing. But when you're moving across a period, the shielding effect is not so much seen here. Its effect is getting diminished due to increase in effective nuclear charge as the electrons are added in the same shell. Now, just now we said that across a period, the ionization enthalpy actually increases. But if we see for beryllium and boron, beryllium comes first and borons come after that. The electronic configuration of beryllium is 1s2, 2s2, and that of boron is 1s2, 2s2 and 2p1. Now it is easier to remove 2p electron of boron than 2s electron of beryllium. Now what is happening here? The first ionization enthalpy of boron is slightly less than that of beryllium. Now here in boron, the electron is added in p shell, p subshell. And when you consider the same principal quantum level, because here it is 2s2 and 2p1 electronic configuration, we will see that belonging to the same subshell, the penetration, the shielding effect is not so much seen here. Actually, what happens is S electron is attracted to the nucleus more than a p electron, and this is called actually the penetration power of S. So the penetration of in beryllium, the electron removed during the ionization in a S electron, whereas the electron removed during ionization of boron is a p electron. The penetration of 2s electron to the nucleus is more than that of 2p electron, and this is due to the size and close proximity of the S subshell. The S subshellar orbital is lying closer to the nucleus, and due to its spherical shape, it has got more penetration power. It lies closer to the nucleus and thus experiencing more penetration power or more control by the nucleus. So effective nuclear charge is more for S electron than that for p electron. So in case of boron, the 1s electrons, that is shielding the 2s2 and 2p1 slightly. That's why it is easier to remove one electron from boron, and it is difficult to remove electron from beryllium. The same thing applies for oxygen and nitrogen. Oxygen is lying after nitrogen in the periodic table, but the ionization enthalpy of oxygen is less. The first ionization enthalpy of oxygen is less than that of nitrogen. Now in nitrogen atom, 3 2p electrons are in different atomic orbitals. There are 3 p orbitals, px, py and pz, and in nitrogen all 3 are actually unpaired, lying in each of the orbitals, atomic orbitals, leading to less interelectronic repulsions. Whereas in oxygen atom, 2 of the 4 2p electrons must occupy the same 2p orbital, resulting in an increased electron-electron repulsion. So here repulsion is more, so it is easier to remove the 4th 2p electron from oxygen than it is to remove one of the 3 2p electrons from nitrogen. Now coming to electron gain enthalpy. When you are adding an electron to neutral gaseous atom to convert it into negative ion, the process is defined as electron gain enthalpy. Just go through the slide. Now electron gain enthalpy increases as we are moving across a period, and down the group it decreases. Same reason as that of the electron as the ionization enthalpy and atomic radius. Now the thing is that oxygen and fluorine, their electron gain enthalpy is less negative than that of their succeeding element. That means oxygen's electron gain enthalpy will be slightly less than that of sulfur, and the electron gain enthalpy of fluorine will be slightly less than that of chlorine. This is because when the electron is added to both oxygen or fluorine, their actually size is small, so there is a lot of inter-electron repulsion. Now this is the same thing that we just now discussed. Now coming to electronegativity. It is a qualitative measure of the ability of an atom in a chemical compound to attract shared electrons to itself. There are three actually scales of electronegativity measurement: Pauling scale, Mulliken-Jaffe scale, and Allred-Rashov scale. Now, in the Pauling scale, fluorine has got a highest value, that is 4, and it is the most electronegative element. So, non-metallic elements have a strong tendency to gain electrons, and the reason is simple, because once they complete their octet by gaining electrons, they will be much stable. And electronegativity is inversely related to metallic property of element. So metals will have very less electronegativity, and decrease in electronegativity down a group is accompanied by a decrease in non-metallic properties. Now oxidation state. Oxidation state actually means the valency, means the valence. Actually, when an element, the oxidation state of an element in a particular compound, that is actually means that when it is combining with a element, based on both their electronegative considerations, what is the charge acquired by that atom, that is called the oxidation state. So oxidation state is actually variable one. Now you will see here fluorine. See, fluorine is the most electronegative element. Whatever compounds it forms, be it ionic compound or covalent compound, it will always show negative or -1 oxidation state. But in compounds like OF2, generally we know oxygen has got a valency or oxidation state of -2. But here in OF2 compound, since oxygen is combining with a more electronegative element, it will show here +2 oxidation state. So oxidation state is basically a variable one. Now coming to chemical reactivity. Now period 2 and period 3, if you consider these elements that we have seen in the box, you are seeing in the box, that is lithium. Lithium will show chemical properties similar with magnesium. Beryllium will show chemical properties similar with aluminium, and boron will show chemical properties similar with silicon. Now this is called a diagonal relationship, and this diagonal relationship is seen that here that the properties seen are actually similar. Chemical properties are very much similar. What chemical properties? For example, lithium, it generally forms covalent compound. It is here beryllium also same thing. Now aluminium also, it can form covalent compounds. Aluminium chloride is predominantly covalent in nature. Now beside this, there are differences also. Now why is this anomalous behavior? It is due to their small size, large charge to radius ratio, and high electronegativity of the element. Now see, there are differences also. Everything is not similar. The first member of the group has only 4 valence electron. That is, we are talking about lithium, beryllium, and boron. But the second member of the groups have 9 valence electron. Okay. Now, as a consequence of this, the maximum covalency of the first member of each group is 4, whereas the other members of the group can expand their valence shell to accommodate more than 4 pair of electrons. Example, aluminium, it can form AlF6 3 minus. Secondly, the first member of the p block elements, they have the ability to form p pi multiple bond. That is, they can form double bond and triple bond, which is very, very important for carbon nitrogen compounds. And the second period elements, they are not able to form say double bond or triple bond. So, overview of the chapter. Metallic character decreases from right to left, whereas non-metallic character increases from left to right. This is due to addition of electrons in various orbitals. Now, some are acidic, basic and neutral, or better known as amphoteric oxide. Now, the oxides which are formed by the elements on the extreme left is mostly basic. That is sodium oxide, potassium oxide. This will be basic. The elements which are forming oxides in the extreme one, they will be acidic. That is Cl2O7, then OF2. These were all acidic. And the oxides of element in the center are amphoteric. For example, Al2O3. Or they can be neutral also. For example, carbon monoxide or nitric oxide. Among transition metals, that is the D series, the change in atomic radius is much smaller as compared to those of the representative elements across the period. The change in atomic radii is still smaller among the inner transition elements. As a consequence, they are less electropositive than group 1 and group 2 metals. So this is the end. We have got a nice periodic table at the end. And so this is it. Thank you.